Joining us tonight. Thanks for joining us tonight to learn a little bit more about backpacking in Colorado, backpacking with the Colorado Mountain Club specifically. And we've got some tips if you're brand new to backpacking and trying to figure out how to get started. And we've got room at the end for questions and discussion, so it should be a good mix of information and getting your questions answered tonight. So thanks for joining us. We are recording this and it will be available afterwards. I've also seen, if you check the chat, I dumped a ton of links right into the chat window. Those are all links that I'm going to be showing in the presentation, so I just wanted to make sure you had an instant way to access those. But again, you can always look through the presentation later and find those links in context. And we've got a bunch of folks on the call tonight that are involved with backpacking at the CMC in a few different ways. And what we'd like to do is move through the presentation pretty efficiently. And so we're asking that everybody mutes themselves and that if you have questions as we go, feel free to ask them, but I want you to ask them in the chat. And we've got some trip leaders and other folks standing by that can answer those. I can't answer them while I'm driving the presentation, so I asked the other volunteers on the call to just jump in and answer those questions if you see them come up. And then again, we'll have time for group discussion at the very end, so you can save your questions or you can ask them as we go. So this presentation tonight is presented by two different organizations within the CMC, the backpacking section, which we like to abbreviate as BPX, and the backpacking school. And I'm going to define what both of those are in some slides as we go, but we're thrilled to be partnering on this project tonight. This is our agenda. We're going to fly through a lot of material. So if you have questions or want to learn more about any one of these items, we can help direct you to more resources. So just again, ask a question in the chat. But yeah, this is really supposed to be an overview of backpacking with the club as well as in Colorado in general. We find we get a lot of transplants that move to Colorado. And they've backpacked in other parts of the country, but never here. And so it is a little bit different in the Rocky Mountains than other parts of the country. I'm originally from North Carolina. I've done a lot of hiking in the Smokies and the Appalachians. And I still had a lot to learn when I came to Colorado. So we'll go over some of those differences tonight. These are all photos from my personal collection. And as much as possible, I've tried to identify the locations in case you're feeling inspired and you want to know where these shots are. So your guides tonight are Louise Campbell Blair, who is the chair and the treasurer of the backpacking section. She's also a trip leader, a mentor leader, and she instructs in the beginner snowshoe school. So wave on the line there, Louise. And I'm Lisa Shroyer. I am one of the directors of the backpacking school. I'm also a trip leader. I am a trip leader with the backpacking section, and I do day hikes. And I am also on the backpacking section committee. So I'm involved in both the section and the school. And so are Wayne and Craig, who are also on the call. Wayne does a lot with the club. You've probably seen his name before. He is an instructor in the backpacking school. He is a trip leader in the backpacking section. He is the director of the Backcountry Incident Management School and I think the Snowshoe School, and he does a bunch of other stuff. Craig is also on the backpacking section committee. He's a backpacking trip leader and an instructor in the backpacking school. So you've got, between the four of us, a lot of backpacking experience. And we're all doing this as volunteers. A lot of the CMC's adult programming is run by volunteers. And we do this because we're super passionate about the outdoor community and trying to grow it and teach people to safely and sustainably use our public lands here in Colorado. And it's also just super fun. We have a great time doing it. So if you're interested in finding ways to get involved as a volunteer, I've got a link here. Again, it's in the chat as well. And you can find ways to volunteer. If you're interested in being a trip leader, all of us would be happy to help you with that as well. Super rewarding. I'm going to hand it over to Louise for a moment here.
Thank you, Lisa. Welcome, everybody, and thank you all for joining us. And also big thanks to Lisa for putting this together. There's so much information at CMC, and sometimes it's just difficult to know how each section runs and how to get involved. So I'm going to leave all that up to Lisa. But what I wanted to do is, first of all, welcome you, and hopefully you will all come backpacking with us. It's so much more rewarding than just doing a day hike because you really get to know people. But I wanted to share a new thing that we're doing this year. We are offering a series of educational events to help people stay safe and be educated in the backcountry. We've been very, very lucky that we haven't had any serious incidents in the last 6 years of our existence as the BPX section. And that's because we have just incredible leaders and they're all very well trained. But we really like to educate the participants on how to be a good participant, as well as our leaders, how to look after you. So hence Introduction to Backpacking tonight, which Lisa's doing. Um, but here's what we have. We have a few by Zoom and a few in person. So coming up in June, and you can find this on the website, you'll be able to sign up now for the Zoom. We have Carl Ford, who's a Triple Crown and a CMC trip leader. He's going to do a presentation on how to be eco-friendly when you're backpacking, and also how to be a lightweight backpacker, which is really a different beast and it can get expensive if you don't know how to do it properly. So that's by Zoom. And then you guys are the first to hear about this. We haven't actually announced it yet or published it, but we're very excited to have a TV chef. This is Chef Corso, and he is going to come and do a live cooking demonstration. Of course, that has to be in person at CMC's base camp. So that'll be on June the 17th in the evening. So if you go to REI or Sierra Club and buy that bag of dehydrated food, I can guarantee you won't be able to do that after you've seen his food. So that's on the 17th. And then moving into July, we have two sessions on how to use Gaia GPS. So most people have a tracking system on their phone. Very few people really know how to use them properly. So we're going to have two sessions. One is really geared towards, well, members and trip leaders, but the second one is geared towards trip leaders and the more advanced members that maybe want to go out on their own. So you'll see those on the website as well. Those are also in person because it's a complicated tool and we have a number of other trip leaders who are going to be on hand to do one-on-one coaching for you. And then we have another Zoom session, which again has not been launched or announced yet, but it probably will be announced on Monday. And this is how to use your InReach Mini. So again, you'll see almost everyone's got that orange device stuck to their backpack, but do they really know how to use it? And do they know what happens when they press that SOS button? So we're going to be talking about the power of that little orange device, as well as review some of the other satellite devices that you may have. And that'll be a Zoom. So watch out for these. We'll be announcing them in our newsletter, our email communications, Facebook page, and you can always search for them on the website in the same way that Lisa's going to show you how to find BPX trips. So I'm going to leave you back with Lisa and hope to see you on the trail soon.
Thanks, Louise. Yeah, I had to hit SOS on my InReach last year, and it was a very eye-opening experience. So I really recommend that one. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the risks in backpacking tonight. And so some of these educational sessions will be really helpful for mitigating some of the risks we're going to talk about. Awesome. So, let's start with the fun stuff before we get into the scary stuff, though. So why do we backpack? This may seem like an obvious question, but I think it's an important one to answer, as we talk about backpacking in Colorado. And excuse me, my dog is making background noise. So why do we backpack? Well, I think we all have our own reasons, but some of the reasons I've heard in being on a lot of group trips over the years is all of these reasons, right? And really, at the end of the day, we're creating memories, really, really precious memories that we carry with us for a lifetime. I think backpacking has changed a lot of our lives. for the better. And we don't want to live without it going forward. But some of the really like practical reasons you might backpack, you can reach distant spots that you just can't get to on a day hike. Once you stack up days of hiking, you can reach really remote areas and really unlock the wilderness through backpacking, whether that's alpine lakes, high peaks, passes, far out remote wilderness areas, or you may go internationally. Like Louise travels internationally to backpack quite a bit. Patagonia, the Alps, Nepal, there's some amazing international backpacking destinations as well. For me, like two of my favorite things in the world are hiking and camping, and backpacking lets me combine the two. So it makes sense. You get to be immersed in nature, you get to unplug, get away from the digital world. A lot of us are gearheads. You don't have to be a gearhead to be a backpacker, but a lot of us are. So if you want to go really deep into rabbit holes and weigh all your stuff and do DIY gear, like backpacking has that potential for you. There's a lot of camaraderie amongst backpackers. We bond in a different way out there than you do in any other group activity. And then if you're interested in big objectives, if you want to do the Colorado Trail, the Appalachian Trail, etc., backpacking is how you do those big trails. And there's a lot of athleticism involved. So if you're training and you want to, go for some distance hikes, or you want to be able to stack big peak summits onto backpacking. Backpacking is a really great way to train for those objectives. You get to spend quality time with friends and family, and you build resilience. I mean, if it's 30 degrees and it's raining and you're in a tent and you've got to do all your camp chores and figure out how to not only survive, but to thrive out there and to not be miserable, like that is a great way to build grit and resilience. So I think backpacking is really good for character as well. And there are other reasons too, but these are some of the top ones. And this is some photos of trips I've been on recently. That one with the big rocks, the third one over, it was last weekend. I was in Lost Creek. It was a great hike. So what are your options for backpacking with the Colorado Mountain Club specifically? Let's jump into that. So there are two organizations within the CMC that are devoted to backpacking. The CMC is obviously very large and has a lot of subgroups and schools, but there are two that are dedicated to backpacking. And those are the Backpacking School and the Backpacking Section, or BPX. So the school, I'm specifically talking about the Denver group backpacking school. There have been other programs with other sections around the state. Pikes Peak had a backpacking class. I haven't seen it on the calendar recently, but if you're in that area, you should check with your local leaders there. But I'm talking specifically about the Denver group backpacking school. So that is a Denver-based school. It's a progressive program that includes lectures and trips, and it happens once a year, roughly June to August. And the 2025 school starts next week, and it is full and registration is closed. But just to give you an idea of what the school is all about, it's really designed for absolute beginners, novices, or returning backpackers. If you backpacked 20 years ago and you're coming back to it now, or if you've backpacked in other states and you want to learn about how to do it in the Rockies, the school is really designed for you. So we'll teach you how to be a backpacker from scratch. Um, and you'll then have the skills and confidence to go on trips with the CMC and on your own potentially. And there is a cost. Most of the CMC schools have a cost. The tuition this year was $175, and you do have to supply all your own gear, which is true of the backpacking section as well. We are not guides. We are not an outfitter. We don't carry your food or any of your stuff for you. You have to provide all of your own gear and carry it with you. So that's the school. Again, it happens once a year and it's really designed for beginners. The backpacking section is a special section of the club. There are multiple special sections. You may be familiar with ascending hikes, Rocky Mountain over the Hill Gang, Trailblazers, the Bobcats. We're another special section, and we're dedicated to camping and backpacking. And we put on the schedule 70 to 80 trips a year, which include camping, backpacking, and winter camping. And those trips range from easy to difficult. And really, these trips are designed for people that already know how to backpack, have all their gear figured out, and they can participate self-sufficiently. It doesn't mean the trip leaders won't help you, but it's not a teaching environment. We expect you to know what you're doing when you go on the BPX trips. Some of the easy trips are more, suited for new backpackers, but we're not teaching you to backpack. Okay, and these trips are year-round, but they're really concentrated in the summer because most of the trips are backpacking trips. There are no prerequisites formally to join BPX or go on a BPX trip. The school is not required. It's great if you've done the school, but that's not a requirement. So I think a lot of people assume that you have to take the backpacking school before you can go on backpacking trips, and that's not the case. So a lot of our members come in with years of backpacking experience, and we don't expect them to take the school, for instance. But the trip leaders will make sure you're a good fit for the trip. So if you sign up for a BPX trip, a trip leader will reach out to you to ask about your backpacking experience, your recent hikes, your fitness, your confidence in your gear and your pace and all of those things, because we want to make sure that you're safe and you can succeed on these trips. So we'll be checking to make sure you're a good fit. There are extra dues for BPX. It's $20 a year. And with that, you get access to all of these trips, and you also have educational series like the ones that Louise mentioned, as well as some in-person community events. We have a big party in the spring called the Member Summit, and we may be bringing back fall picnics as well. And we're always open to new members. So I'll show you on the next slide, but um, you do have to sort of manually enroll as a BPX member, which you can do by calling the office, or you can email us and we can help you. And I'll show you on the next page how to do that. I just want to pause here. I see there's some questions in the chat. Just want to make sure trip leaders on the call are answering those. Do you need anything? Do we need to stop and discuss anything? Take that as a no. Okay. Here are QR codes. You can shoot with your phone or click on the links directly. These links are also in the chat. If you want to learn more about either the backpacking school or the backpacking section, on the page for the backpacking section, you can find more info on how to become a member of that section. And we'll go through how to find those trips as well on the website. Give you a minute there if you want to take a picture. All right, so though those are the two groups in the club that are dedicated to backpacking, there are other opportunities to backpack with the CMC. There's the winter camping school, which is a separate school from the backpacking school. And no surprise, they go camping in the winter, but it's really kind of winter backpacking because you have to snowshoe into your campsite. And it's a great school. You learn a lot of cold weather survival skills. So I highly recommend that. I think registration usually opens in December or January, and then it's like a February, March school. The link is there. You can check that out. And there are also plenty of trip leaders and other sections in the club that host backpacking trips that are not part of BPX. So I know this weekend, for instance, the Trailblazers have a backpacking trip on the calendar. Trailblazers is the section for people aged 21 to 40, and they put on a few backpacking trips a year. And sometimes their trip leaders will they'll combine like a high peak objective and a backpack. So they do some cool combination trips like that. And then there are other trip leaders that are just doing their own thing across the state. And those are not BPX trips. So we'll go through how to find those trips, but just wanted to mention that there are lots of opportunities with the club to go backpacking. There's also the family section. The family section is designed for adults that are traveling with their children, and they usually put on several backpacking trips a year. So that's really fun if you want to go with your kids as well. So if you're brand new, you've never backpacked or you've gone once and you still have a lot to learn, I've got some recommendations for you tonight. So if you couldn't get into the school this year, what I do recommend is that you keep it in mind for next year. The registration opens around March 1st every year. So check back around then and try to do the 2026 school if you can. You will learn so much. It is a very thorough program. But if you want to get started this year and you didn't get into the school, what can you do now? Well, I've got a couple resources here for you. So I suggest that you start learning a lot. There's a lot to learn with backpacking. The Backpacker's Field Manual is the book that we teach from in the school. So you can pick that up at any of your online book retailers or in person potentially. It's a great book, super comprehensive book. So if you just spend some time reading that, you will learn a lot. I've also linked to a great YouTube series here. Homemade Wanderlust, I think she's a Triple Crown, which means she's done the Appalachian Trail, the Continental Divide Trail, and the Pacific Crest Trail. So that's like a very honorable designation in backpacking. She's a very prolific backpacker. She has this series on YouTube, Everything You Need to Know to Start Backpacking. It's almost 4 hours long, but it's pretty comprehensive. So you can put that on a Saturday night while you're doing a puzzle or cleaning the house or something, and you'll learn a lot from that as well. And you got to work on your gear because this is a gear heavy sport. So we're going to go over our recommended gear checklist later in the presentation. So you can start reviewing that, thinking through your options. There's a lot of research you can do, join online communities and start shopping, essentially, borrowing gear from friends, trying it out, etc. And then really after that, you need to practice. So you can do what we call a gear shakedown, which is where you pack everything in your pack as if you were going backpacking, and you hike in a couple miles somewhere in the woods and you take everything out and set up camp. You practice boiling water with your stove, filtering water from the creek. Try everything out without the pressure of actually having to spend the night. So you can really work on dialing in both how you pack and what you pack and how to use all of it in the field. You can do this in your backyard too. You don't have to go to the woods. And then training. Hiking with a full backpack is a lot harder than the same hike with a day pack. So you should start training by hiking with your full pack on. It is a lot harder and it's good to sort of build up your conditioning before you start going on real trips. And then what I recommend is that you try to find some friends or family or trusted people that are experienced backpackers that'll go on a one-night trip with you. And you really want to go on an easy trip. And I've defined what an easy trip for beginner backpackers is up here at the top. This is what we do for the first trip in the backpacking school. We go on a really easy trip because there's so many variables the first time you go backpacking. Like let's take away one variable, which is making the hiking itself hard. So you're only going to go in 1 to 3 miles from the trailhead. You want to camp near water, below tree line, and you're just going to spend the night. You're going to do all the basic chores of setting up camp, feeding and hydrating yourself, and then breaking camp and hiking out the next day. You will learn so much from that experience. Again, we really, really recommend you go with people who know what they're doing, and, be as safe as possible. But this is a good way to get your gear and your skills sorted before you start going on organized group trips with the club. If you're in the CMC Slack, which you should have been invited to when you joined as a member, that's also a place where you can ask for recommendations on gear, on places to go, etc. It's a great online resource for you. So that's what I recommend if you're just getting started. If you can't get into the official backpacking school, we don't really have beginner backpacking trips outside of that. So I do recommend that you find some people in your personal life that you trust, that you can go with. And then when are you ready to go on a CMC trip generally or specifically a BPX trip? Well, what we recommend is that you should go when you know how to use your gear. You can hike to camp comfortably with your pack. You can manage yourself out there. And just a note on time management. Newer backpackers they just take a lot longer to set up camp and do all the camp chores and to break camp. So give yourself a lot of time when you start going on group trips because in a group setting, your behavior affects everybody else and vice versa. So you want to be sort of conscious of time management. If you know that it's going to take you 3 hours to break camp and have breakfast and do all of that, and the trip leader says we're going to leave at 9 a.m., that means you got to get up at 6 a.m. So I want you to think about that stuff as you start going on group trips as well. And a note on fitness, like I said, hiking with this heavy pack is a lot harder than a little day pack. And so don't overestimate your ability. Start easy and work up to bigger trips. It is something you really need to train for and build your base up. There's some other resources for you. Some of the great schools that CMC offers that are super helpful for backpackers. The Wilderness Trekking School, if you're not familiar with it, is the CMC's comprehensive course on hiking in the Rockies. And there is a fall session that starts in September. I didn't see a registration page for it yet, but keep your eyes on the website for that. You will learn so much about navigation, survival, first aid, weather, all kinds of other skills that will benefit you as a backpacker. And then the Backcountry Incident Management School, which Wayne is the director of, is great for learning how to manage emergencies and incidents in the backcountry. And there is another fall session of that in September as well. And I've linked to the BPX Facebook group here, which is another good online community resource for you. I'll pause there. Any existential questions, burning desires coming out of the chat or anywhere else? All right, we'll keep rolling. All right, so you want to find, how do I find these trips on the website? You're eager to go. Well, let's talk about that. So this is very, it's a pretty simple path. You're going to go to the cmc.org. It's our website. And then you're going to click on Education and Adventure, which is in the top navigation bar. I've got a picture of that at the bottom here. And then the drop down opens up. You're going to click Find Trips. And then on the next page, over here on the left, you'll see I Want to Go, and you're going to click Backpacking. And that will autofill, auto-populate all of these results at the right, which are specific trips that are on the calendar that you could potentially sign up for. Now, if you just click backpacking, it's going to show you all the backpacking trips. So that includes BPX trips and other trips that the club is holding. So a quick visual way to differentiate between BPX trips and other backpacking trips is here with this big red arrow. You can see in any trip title for a BPX trip, it will say BPX trip in the title. And so that means that it's a special section trip and you need to be a member of BPX to go on that trip. So it's just a quick way to find BPX trips. On the next two results here, you can see don't say BPX. These are other trips. In the CMC, this Payne Creek one, for instance, is the Trailblazers hike that I mentioned. That's this weekend. I think I grabbed this screen grab a couple days ago and there were still 5 spots available on that trip. It may still have spots available, I don't know. But so you can find all the backpacking trips that are available by searching this way and go through them, read about them, see if they're a good fit for you. I did circle here. You can see very quickly some key facts about each of these trips and the results. Difficulty being a big one. So the top one is an easy trip. This next one is a difficult trip. So that's a quick way for you to see, is this a good trip for me? And the dates are also shown in the results. So you can scan through all of these options. So the backpacking section, BPX, we try to schedule a lot of our trips in the spring. So if you go right now and look, you will see we have trips scheduled from now until October because we really try to get as many on the calendar early in the year as possible so that our members and our trip leaders can like schedule their lives around these trips, because you do potentially have to take time off work or get childcare or dog care or what have you, right? So, but we do keep adding trips as the season goes on, but we like to have a nice base of 30 trips or more in the spring for the whole year. This is a great way to use the CMC website. Instead of I want to go backpacking, you could pick any of these other options and find relevant trips. So if you weren't used to searching for trips this way, if you're just used to looking at the calendar, this is a great way to filter into what kind of trips you're looking for. Now, if you want to find all of the BPX specific trips, because you're a BPX member and you want to find all those trips, here are the 2 options you have for finding. You can go through that same search sequence, but you're going to type BPX. So in this search bar at the top left, if you just type BPX and then hit search, it will only show you the BPX search results. So that's one way to do it. Or you can just look at the calendar view. So we keep our own calendar of trips, which is linked here directly, or you can always find that calendar on our web page on the CMC website. And that's how you find all of our trips. Super exciting. All right, that's how you find the trips. So let's talk a little bit about the special considerations backpacking in Colorado, which includes all of the wonders and benefits of backpacking in Colorado, as well as some of the risks that are unique potentially to Colorado backpacking. So some of our highlights, we're so lucky, right? Like the Rocky Mountains, world-class mountains that we have access to by living here and being members of the outdoor community. And backpacking really opens up all of this wonderful mountain wilderness to us. We also have, a concentration of 14ers and 13ers, high peaks that you can backpack to a base camp and then summit. We have two amazing long trails that run through our state. Those are the Colorado Trail, which is 486 miles running from Denver to Durango. And the Continental Divide Trail also runs through the state. That is, I think it's like 2,800 miles. I don't know how long it is. It's really long. And it runs from the Canada border to the Mexico border through Colorado. And the Colorado section is probably the best section. I haven't done it, but we do have some of the most exciting parts of the trail. We also have four national parks, three of which include backpacking options, and 44 wilderness areas and over 14 million acres of national forest with all of these incredible ecosystems from the prairies in the east to the deserts in the south to all of our different mountain ranges and ecosystems. It's really such a special place to backpack. And on top of that, we have incredible wildflowers, wildlife. One of my favorites, depending on where you go, you have the option to stop at hot springs on your way home from your hike. And great little mountain towns. This is in the bottom right, the little town of Marble, which is south of Carbondale. And there's this great barbecue spot there that backpacked, and then we stopped there. It was really nice. But a lot of these little mountain towns have amazing independent local businesses that just really add a lot of charm and character to your trips if you can stop in on your way in or out. We also have amazing waterfalls, alpine lakes, and high passes. It's not just about the peaks in the Rockies. The high passes are super cool because often the trails just go right over them, and you get to stand at the top and look into two different worlds, essentially. You're looking into different drainages, which is really cool. And we have lots of historic sites and ghost towns that you can backpack and hike to as well. Um, yeah. Very lucky. So that's all the good stuff. Let's talk a little bit about the scary stuff. So there are some serious risks to backpacking and hiking in general in Colorado. And I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with these, but I think it bears repeating some of them as you think about going out on multi-day trips. I would consider altitude to be one of our biggest risks for multiple reasons, right? One, you could get acute mountain sickness, which can be really unpleasant and can be debilitating and dangerous, especially when you're really far out and away from a trailhead. And altitude is not only dangerous because of its effect on your physical body, but it also means that you are exposed potentially when you're above tree line, which has all other kinds of risks associated with it. And it can be hard to reach you if you need to be rescued or extracted in high altitude environments that can also complicate rescues. So altitude gives us access to these amazing landscapes, but it can also be risky because of that. Another big risk is falling. You know, our trails are rocky. You may be along exposed ridges and yeah, falling is just a real risk, especially when you have a heavy pack and your balance might be off. Extreme weather. So along with the altitude comes extreme weather, and particularly dangerous weather in our alpine environments. There's really three ways I think about that. There's lightning, which is dangerous for obvious reasons, right? If you get struck, it can be very injurious. But also you might get wet and cold if you get stuck in a rainstorm and you're planning on spending multiple days out there. If you're wet and the temperature drops, that can lead to hypothermia way faster than you might expect. So you need to have gear and a trip plan that prepare you for that scenario. And there's also weather that disorients. So if you're in fog or hail or a heavy storm, and you get lost and you go off trail, that's a risk, or it may cause you to fall and get injured. So we think about weather in multiple ways, but lightning is obviously like a really big risk that we take very seriously above tree line. And not just these extreme weather events are dangerous, but extreme swings in temperature are just natural in our alpine environments. So it may be 65 degrees and sunny during the day when you're hiking, and then as soon as the sun starts to go down, it drops to 32 degrees and it's cold. And so you need to pack for both of those scenarios and make sure you don't get super sweaty during the day and then have nothing dry to change into when the temperature drops. Because again, you can get hypothermia a lot faster than you might expect. So you got to be prepared for those swings in temperature. Wildfire is, an incident sort of risk that we need to be aware of in Colorado. Getting lost is a risk everywhere all the time. um, Even in our corporate everyday lives, I feel lost sometimes, but especially in the backcountry, it can be a real risk. Beetle kill, we have a lot of dead trees here, and the risk of dead trees is that they could fall on you. So you got to be really careful around the dead trees. Because of all our wildfires we've had historically, there's a risk of mudslides and heavy rain through those fire scars. And the risk is not just that the mudslide will fall on you as you're hiking, but they may slide on the road that you're driving in or out of. So you want to think about that as well. Our wildlife, moose, bear, mountain lion, rattlesnake. We also have wolves now. So you want to be following wildlife safe practices. And our water contamination. We recommend that you filter all water in Colorado. I've hiked with people who say it's a fresh mountain spring, it's totally safe. Well, not really. First of all, we have a lot of mining history in Colorado, but more likely than that, we have Giardia contamination in our water, which is a bacterial issue. So we recommend you filter all water. Not all filters remove heavy metals. So if you're going to be in an area that had heavy mining activity, you want to research, is the water safe and what kind of filter do I need for that? Most of our wilderness areas in the normal creeks, it's really the bacterial and the viral stuff that you're worried about, not the heavy metals. But all of that is really dependent on context, where you're going, and what kind of water system you have. So you need to research that before you go. If you don't know what Giardia is, it's a super unpleasant gastrointestinal issue that can be chronic if it's not treated well. So you really don't want to get that. um, and then another risk that you may not think about as much is some of the roads that go to our trailheads are really rough. So, I mean, I've been up so many rough four-wheel drive roads. You get to the top of the trailhead after an hour of driving, and there's a Honda Civic or a Toyota Prius there, and you're like, how did this car get here? So like people make it work, but if you have a low clearance vehicle or a car that's really not rated for rough roads, like you have a higher likelihood of getting stuck or popping a tire or something. So think about that. I know a lot of people carry an air compressor in their car in case they pop a tire or they lose air in a tire. So that's something to think about as well. It's not just the trail itself, it's getting to the trail that can be your issue. Um, yeah. And we'll talk a little bit how to mitigate some of these risks. Oh, here we go. Yeah. So how to mitigate some of these risks. First of all, I'm not going to talk about how to mitigate all of them. And there's nothing I can do or tell you that will make you 100% safe. There's nothing we can do in the wilderness that will ever be 100% safe. That's part of the risk and part of the joy of why we're out there. But there are ways that you can mitigate those risks through preparedness, understanding, and working on your skills and your gear. So some of those key ways to mitigate risks are go with experienced trip leaders. That's what the CMC is here for. Our trip leaders are trained, they have a lot of experience, they know a lot of this stuff, so they can help guide you through this experience. And review the trip plans, whether you're going on a CMC trip or you're going with friends. Like review the trip plan before the trip. You should know where you're going, where you're camping, where the water is, what the weather looks like, how to get to the trailhead, all of that. You should know, are there any good ways, any bailout points? If a fire were to come up or the weather were to change, like what's our plan B? And you should ask your trip leader questions. Again, whether it's your friends, family, or an official trip leader, like ask them questions. Have they thought about a plan B? Are they providing all the maps and route info, etc.? And you should interview them a little bit. Make sure you trust them before you go out there with somebody that's organized a trip. You and the trip leader should have a safety and emergency plan. Do you know where the closest emergency room is? Do you have a way to communicate with the outside world if you have to? And did you leave your trip plan with somebody at home so that if you don't show up Monday morning at work, will somebody know where to look for you? That's part of your emergency planning. It's really important. Um, in terms of the altitude risks, you should plan to be below tree line by afternoon. That's our general recommendation, but you got to check the weather because there can still be storms in the morning. And as we get later in the season, if you're backpacking in September and October, your risk of severe weather in the afternoon does decrease. Doesn't go to zero, but it's not as likely as it is in July and August, for instance. Bring maps, know how to read them, take those Gaia classes if you can, check the weather, filter all water, pack for all weather, all potential weather. And you should do research on recent trip reports. These are some resources where you can find good beta, we call it, on trip reports. You can also call the local Forest Service and or the national park if you're going into a national park and get some rangers intel on the trails. In terms of wildlife, you should always use wildlife safe food storage. So that means a hard-sided bear can, um, or an ursack, or a proper bear hang, which is where your food sack is uh, hanging in a tree at a pretty far distance off the ground. I've seen 18 feet is the recommendation some places, 12 feet in other places. It's pretty hard to get those bags up there at the appropriate height, especially with our short-limbed trees in Colorado. So it may be easier just to get a bear can or an ursack. It's also easier to not have to try to get your bag in a tree at the end of a long hiking day. And don't keep your food in your tent. We don't want the animals to visit you at night. That's a great way to to not make friends with the bears and the marmots and the squirrels. Carry a first aid kit and take a first aid class. We have some great WUFA classes at the CMC that you could take. And you should always carry the 10 essentials. The first aid kit is one of those 10 essentials. I'm not going to go into what the 10 essentials are here, but you should Google that and be very familiar with it. You should always have the 10 essentials on your person out in the backcountry. I've seen some crazy stuff happens where you thought you were just walking away from camp for 5 minutes to go on a little side hike and then weird stuff happens. And so you should really always have some safety gear with you, carry the 10 essentials. If you're base camping and you make camp, you leave your tent, and then you're going to go do a summit, you should have an emergency shelter to take with you to do the summit if you're not going to take your tent. So think about that as well when you're packing. Because if you get stuck on that mountain far away from your tent, how are you going to make it through the night? Something to think about. Bring a satellite device if you can. I know it's not a cheap option. I've had to use one. I've been with other people that have had to use them. And though it's expensive, it is an investment. When you need it, you're so glad that you did, that you bought one. That's what I'll tell you from my experience. And lastly, don't pitch your tent under dead trees. Unfortunately, this is something that does happen almost every year. I hear reports. Those dead trees we have in Colorado, either the branches will fall off, the whole top of the tree will just fall off, or the whole tree will fall over in a wind. And they do with some regularity fall on people in their tents, and it's usually fatal, which is really awful. So look up before you pitch your tent. Some other just sort of neutral considerations. These are neither awesome nor bad, but we have a really short season for backpacking in Colorado. You can look up average snow-free dates for any area online, and what you'll find is in a lot of our high mountain areas, they're not snow-free until mid-July. So the Four Pass Loop is a beloved backpacking loop in the Maroon Bells Wilderness. And a lot of the passes there are not reliably snow-free until late July, actually. And there are years, multiple years now, I've had friends get permits and we're ready to go mid-July. And then we come to find out there's still 3 feet of snow on the passes and the creeks are really high because there's so much snow melting still. So look up these snow-free dates before you plan a trip. And because of that, our season is short. So you're really looking at July to September. There are places you can go in June and in May. But just keep that in mind that it is just because it's warm in Denver doesn't mean it's time to go backpacking yet. um, but hut trips are a so winter camping is a great way to get out there in the winter, and then hut trips are another alternative. So huts are like rustic cabins that are in the national forest run by different organizations that you can reserve, and you do kind of backpack into them, usually on snowshoe or cross-country skis. You have to bring all your food and your sleeping gear with you, but you don't need a tent because you're staying in a building. It's a super cool experience. It's a great Colorado sort of winter backpacking experience I recommend. In a lot of our wilderness areas, not a lot, in some of our wilderness areas and our national parks, you do need permits. Those are almost always managed through recreation.gov, and they go really fast. So Indian Peaks, Maroon Bells, now Blue Lakes down in, I think that's the Mount Sneffels Wilderness has permit requirements. So those permits in those really popular areas do go fast, but some of them have rolling permits available 3 days before the trip. So I know Indian Peaks does that. If you look 3 days before you want to go, there may be new permits available, even though the advance permits sold out in February. So you can just always be looking at recreation.gov and seeing if there are permits available. Trailhead parking can be really awful on summer weekends in Colorado. So really plan ahead. If you can go on a weekday, if you could do a Friday night start, um, or just get up super early, because it can be super competitive. And we really want to practice leave no trace at our trailheads as much as we do on the trail, right? You don't want to be making new parking spots, driving over precious vegetation to make new parking spots. So plan ahead. And 285 and I-70, as you probably know, can be really bad on weekends and holidays. So plan for that as well. And don't be surprised by it, and don't be mad, and don't be a jerk on the road if you and everybody else in Denver decided to go on I-70 and come back on Sunday. Just enjoy the ride. And then trip planning. So BPX on the website, there are trips, which are specific trips that are planned and scheduled that you can go on. And there's also a part of the website called Routes and Places. And those are more generic itineraries that a trip leader chooses and then schedules a trip to go to that place. BPX has designed over 120 backpacking routes and places, and those are on the website. And so if you can find them, it's sort of a guidebook of over 100 backpacking routes in Colorado that you can use for your own planning. This is obviously all at your own risk if you're going to go on your own, but we do have that as a resource. So you can look up different routes and trails, and there's information about the driving, the water sources, good campsites, etc. So you can do that again, cmc.org, education and adventure, find routes and places, and then type in BPX, and we'll show you all our routes and places. And that's kind of a secret that I'm giving you right now. It's not a secret, they're all there, but if you didn't know that, it's like a free book that you get with your membership here, to all of these amazing pre-designed backpacking routes. So check that out. I'm going to hand it over to Wayne to talk a little bit about gear.
Lisa, thanks. And thanks everybody for joining as well too. I'll quickly go through gear, but I wanted to give you at least my philosophy that there are three types of backpackers: the luckiest, the unluckiest, and like the rest of us. The luckiest backpackers are ones that completed their backpacking season last fall sometime, never unpacked their backpack, just threw the whole thing in the back of their garage. And they're the luckiest because I will tell you, don't even unpack it. Just go out and get completely new gear, because what you find in that backpack, you may not want to see or experience. So also, the newest backpackers are also the luckiest because, well, they don't have all the gear that all of the rest of us have. So you get to get all new, really cool stuff. So newest backpackers and also the backpackers that didn't do much with their backpack. The unluckiest are those of us, yes, those of us that have done winter camping. So we have actually kept our gear in shape the entire year long. And so we don't get to really get new gear or experience any of the really new cool stuff out there. We just can't justify the price of getting new gear. And we haven't been smart enough to just leave everything in the back of our garage for the entire winter long. And then there's kind of like the rest of us here, which is, okay, we've gone on some backpacks. We got some gear out there, but there's better gear. Maybe we want to get lighter gear, that type of stuff. And so when you approach this thing here, one of my biggest recommendations, and this slide is a little tongue in cheek, is if you're brand new to backpacking, do not go to try to buy everything all at once. You'll learn a lot on some of these easier trips about what are the gear that works for you the best. And if you're upgrading your gear, take it in small bites because it can get expensive really, really quickly. So from a gear standpoint, if we go to the next chart, I looked at many, many, many different gear checklists or gear lists. And I never found one that I liked very much. There was always useful information, but it was never complete enough for me. So I actually put one together for myself here. And then I, gave this to the rest of the CMC, and it's out there and it's available to everyone. And I really go through the main systems that we're going to need or be aware of. And this might have more than you need on it, And as you see on the second page, there's a whole area for just backpacking extras that are more personal items. But you're going to need the backpack and storage associated with it. You need, I'm back on the first page here, the shelter system, the sleep system, your water system, your cooking system, your food, your apparel, and footwear. So like the first page is the key stuff. I use this checklist every single time that I go on a backpacking trip. Even though I think I got it all dialed in and everything, you never know, you're going to forget something. The second page is actually important items as well too, but something to kind of keep aware of. So health and hygiene, it's a toothpaste and toilet paper and a trowel and all that type of stuff. If you have prescriptions, if you have sun or insect protection, then I got all my emergency and repair gear. Navigation is really important. And don't just bring your phone and expect it to work all the time, because one of these days it's not going to be charged enough. So always bring some form of map and compass with you as well too. And then I got an assorted list of personal items. So we talked earlier about the 10 essentials. This is a touch more than a 10 essentials, but you can go in and personalize this list and really figure out what works for you on a backpacking trip. But this will ensure that you are actually bringing enough if you actually thoroughly go through this list and really try to figure out what's the right thing for me. I know a lot of ultralight backpackers kind of skimp on some of the corners here. I'm not an ultralight backpacker, but I do have more light equipment that kind of fits on this whole list as well too. So this list is available for the backpacking section. We use it in the backpacking school as well too, and it forms the basis of what I stuff into my pack for every single trip that I take out there.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think most of us carry 60 to 70 liter packs. Wayne, what size pack do you take?
65.
65, yeah. So that's in order to fit all of the stuff in a pack, you're usually looking for a 60 to 70 liter pack. If you're new to backpacking, that's the size you're looking for. There are people that can get away with a 50 liter or a 55 liter, but they've really dialed in their gear and they can afford to lose some interior space. If you're new to this, you will probably want a bigger pack versus a smaller one. It's quite the journey to work through getting all of your gear and your kit and figuring out what works for you. And so we're going to talk a little bit about pack weight. So you take all of the stuff that Wayne has on this checklist, and you start putting it in your pack, and then you put it on, and what happens? So let's talk a little bit about pack weight. So in the world of backpacking, pack weight is a super hot topic. And it can be controversial. There are people that are strongly opinionated and passionate about different their different points of view on pack weight. So I just want to give you the information so you have it. There's no single recommendation here. It's really based on your personal needs and preferences. And you can start weighing all your gear if you want to or not. That's totally up to you. So let's start with the 20% rule. If you're not familiar with it, the 20% rule is pretty standard across backpacking education, and it states that your total pack weight with everything in it, your food, your water, and everything for the weekend or for the trip, you're going to put on your back should be equal to or less than 20% of your body weight. So obviously that's going to vary a lot based on you. Um, and so if you're on the smaller side, if you're a 120-pound person, for instance, that means your pack should be 24 pounds or less. That's a really light pack. So you're gonna have to really work to get your pack that light. If you're 200 pounds, you can go up to 40. Now I'm gonna tell you, 40 pounds, it doesn't mean 40 pounds is going to be comfortable. It just means it's gonna be easier for you to carry that weight than the smaller person. If you're a 600-pound Sasquatch, you can carry 120 pounds. Go for it. Um, if you're hiking into do Denali, right, and you've got to carry not only all your clothing, your shelter, your food, you've also got technical climbing and alpine gear. Those people's packs are super heavy, and they have to train to be able to carry those packs. It is part of their conditioning to do that kind of hike. If you're doing, Everest without a Sherpa, right? Like you've got to train to carry all the extra weight you're going to carry. But if you're just doing a weekend trip in Colorado, you're not doing a technical objective at the end of it, these recommendations are for you specifically. So you're looking for 20% or less of your body weight. I will tell you, I am way more comfortable at 15% of my body weight. So I can carry 20%, but I feel better at 15. So that's, you know, you're going to have to play with this and figure out what works for you. But by following the 20% rule or even going lighter than that, what you will generally find is that you can hike longer distances, you can do more elevation gain, you can go for longer and more days on end comfortably and without being fatigued, because carrying all of that weight uphill at a steep grade at altitude is really, really hard work. Your heart rate will be higher carrying a pack than it would otherwise. So everything is just harder. So if you can work on your pack weight, you will find you can go farther, faster, and for longer. And you may feel better too on your trips. So that is one reason we recommend that you're at least aware of your pack weight and you think about it. You don't have to do anything with that information if you don't want to. There are a lot of people who say to me, um, there are a lot of people who say, I don't want to know what my pack weighs. Or people say, I don't care what my pack weighs. And I totally get it. If you've been doing this a while and you're comfortable, like don't worry about it. But you do want to improve your longevity, your stamina on the trail, this might be one way to do it. So I want you to take a minute and think about your body weight. And if you can do the math, maybe do it on your phone. If you can't do it in your head, calculate what 20% of your body weight is. And I want you to have that number. So think about that for a minute. Okay, so you know what 20% of your body weight is. Now I want you to look at this chart. I want you to look at the total weight, the bottom row on the chart. And where does your ideal pack weight fit? Which category does that number fall into? So if your ideal pack weight falls in the standard range of 32 to 45 pounds, then you probably don't have a lot to work on. If you've got a standard gear setup, you're probably good. So in that standard range is a lot of the off-the-rack gear you would buy at REI, for instance, will get you into that range. You'll also end up in the standard range if you like to bring some extras. If you want to bring a camera or a chair or a paperback book, that will boost your weight up into the standard range a little bit more. Obviously, that's a huge range. So that really depends on how much you're bringing. And how heavy any of your individual stuff is. But as the numbers go down, you sort of move into these other categories of lightweight and ultralight. And these are more advanced categories of gear that are likely going to cost you more money and take more skill to figure out. So ultralight is a word that gets thrown around in backpacking a lot, and it can refer to any individual item, such as an ultralight tent. It can also refer to your total pack and gear approach. You might be an ultralight backpacker, which means that your total weight of all your stuff on your back is under 20 pounds, which is incredibly light. Okay. So how do you get there? Well, first you should know your base weight. So your base weight is everything in your pack minus the consumables, because things like food, fuel, water are going to vary from one trip to the next, and they're going to vary throughout your trip. As you eat your food over the weekend, there will be less of it, and your food will weigh less. So we want to take out those variable items and just talk about the weight of everything else. So your base weight is your total weight without the consumables, and your biggest consumables are food, water, and fuel. So this shows you what the standard base weight is in each category. So you can work on dialing that in over the summer, during the week, and then you add in those consumable items and it brings you to your total weight, essentially. So by dialing in base weight, you can impact your total weight, is how we think about that. So obviously the ranges here are pretty large in the standard. In backpacking school, we're going out with beginner backpackers. And I find that most beginner backpackers are in that 32 to 45 pound range. 45 pounds is pretty heavy, but in the backpacking school, we don't go very far. So, if you're not going far and you want to bring a bunch of stuff, or you're still dialing in your gear, or you have some older gear that's heavy, like if you only go in a few miles, you have a better chance of being fine. But if you're going to do the Colorado Trail if you're going to do any of our sort of long, like the collegiate loop is a 160-mile circuit. That's amazing. You may want to work on dialing in your weight and reducing it a bit. So you can work on your base weight. This is like throughout your backpacking career, working on your kit and your base weight is something that you'll probably get obsessed with. I think not everybody does though. Like I tend to be a little bit because I'm a gearhead, but there are lots of other CMC backpackers that are not obsessed with their pack weight. So it's really a personal preference thing. Um, but that should give you some good, foundations for thinking about your pack weight if you're getting started or if you want to work on reducing your pack weight going forward. So you already have gear and you want to think about how to work on cutting some of the weight. Well, the biggest changes you can make that will have the biggest impact on your total weight are the big four. So the big four in backpacking are the pack, the tent, the sleeping bag, and the sleeping pad. Those four things make up the majority of the weight and the bulk of your whole kit. So if you replace any one of those or all of those with ultralight versions or lighter weight versions than what you already have, that's going to make a big difference. Those are usually big investments you might want to make over time, but they will have a big impact. And it's just a note on technology in backpacking gear. This green Deuter, however you want to say it, that's my original pack. I think I bought that. It's like 11 years old. And that weighs 4.5 pounds. That same pack, that same model today weighs a lot less than that if you bought it at the store. So over time, all of the standard gear is getting lighter as technology improves and design improves. So just buying newer gear is usually inherently lighter than old gear. Now, if you have old gear and it's paid for and it works, like use it. But that's just a note that older gear tends to be heavier. So this is on the left is my newer pack. That's when it looks so shiny and new. It looks terrible now. But it's a lightweight or ultralight backpack. It weighs 30 ounces compared to the 4.5 pound green bag. So by switching packs and changing a few other items, I think I changed my water system and I stopped bringing so much stuff. I was able to cut 5 pounds off my base weight by making those changes. So that's significant, right? So those are some big ways to reduce weight or changing the big four. And reducing redundancies. You don't need a knife and a multi-tool. Bring one sharp edge. And that may seem like a minor thing, but if you go through that process with everything in your pack, you will find you probably do have a lot of redundancies. In all your pockets and zippers and stuff sacks, you may have 3 lighters, 2 knives, a headlamp, and a flashlight. So reduce those redundancies, and each ounce will help take weight off. Bring less stuff overall. You don't need a chair and a tarp and a camera and a guitar and a book and a ball and a lantern. A lot of that stuff that you're used to taking camping, you don't need in backpacking. So bring less stuff. Now, with the caveat that you never want to bring so little that you're risking your safety or your comfort. So you need all the layers and warm gear and rain gear for your safety. You don't need a camera. But if you want the camera, then you figure out how to carry it, of course. So bring less stuff. I've seen people bring 3 pairs of shoes. Just something to think about. Bring less stuff. And then another way that you may not think about is to reduce the packaging of the stuff that's in your pack. So you could not bring any packaging. You could have your tent and your sleeping bag just shoved in your pack with no stuff sacks or packaging. That may be risky and it's not super organized, but it does reduce the packaging. But stuff like my first aid kit, I bought one at the store and it came in this heavy canvas bag. And so I just took everything out of the canvas bag and put it in an ultralight zipper sack, and that reduced my weight right there. So look at the packaging on items and see what you can do to reduce that as well. And then with time, as you buy new items, you replace every new item with an ultralight version. It doesn't mean you're going to have a 20-pound pack because you may still be bringing a bunch of stuff, but over time with each new item, you're replacing a heavy item with a lighter item. And that's basically how a lot of us end up in the lighter weight categories. I'm a lightweight backpacker. On most 3 or 4 day trips, I'm sitting around 25, 26 pounds total. And I've gotten to that point by just over time replacing stuff with lighter versions, essentially. And that includes like my puffy coat, my rain jacket. I look at the weight of everything before I buy it now, which is how you start to think when you're a backpacker. So there's some tips on not only gear and what you should be bringing, but also thinking about how you put it all together and then what it weighs, which hopefully will be helpful for you as you invest and you go on your adventures. So that's the end of the formal presentation. We have plenty of time for questions and discussion. So I don't think we have, it's not a huge group, so I feel like we could just open it up to people talking. I'm gonna stop screen sharing so I can look at all of you. Hi everybody. So feel free to unmute yourselves and ask questions. You can type it in the chat too. We'll keep an eye on that. But yeah, I mean, as long as it's related to the CMC or backpacking, camping, or hiking, I think we can help you if you have any bigger existential questions. I'm not sure, but go for it. Better websites for ultralight gear. Yes. Oh my gosh. So, um, Garage Grown. I always have to remember the name. Yeah, I have a sticker. Garage Grown Gear. I'll type it in the chat. Is a great independent retailer online for ultralight gear specifically, and a lot of it is cottage makers, small independent companies that are selling stuff. So that's a great resource. In terms of specific brands to look at, Hyperlight is one. Gossamer,
Gossamer.
Gossamer
Gossamer's
Gear.
another.
Yep. And then REI does have a lot of great ultralight stuff now as well. Online, they seem to have more than they do in the store. Yeah. Do you recommend a particular water filter? The Katahdin Be Free. Yeah, so water is also, this is an area where personal preference and style comes in a lot. So Bob mentioned the Katahdin Be Free, which is a squeeze water filter system, which a lot of thru hikers like because they want to move fast and light and they just filter on the trails. They're pulling a 25-mile day. I like to filter a lot of water passively while I'm at camp. So I prefer a gravity system where I can make 2 to 3 liters of water at one time passively while I'm doing other stuff. So any of the squeeze systems or pump systems require you to actively be doing something to make the water. Whereas a gravity system is a passive one that you hang in a tree and set and forget. So what you want to, which of those is going to work for you is really dependent on your style, and how light you want to go. So having a Katahdin Be Free is a good ultralight version because it's a really small system and that's all you have. You don't have multiple bags and straws. So that's where if you're ultralight, it starts to sort of affect the gear that you're choosing. But that's a great question. And if any of the other trip leaders want to jump in on any of these, here, I'll read one. What is the timeline? Wayne, I'm going to throw this to you. What is the timeline for becoming a trip leader?
So I just want to I want to focus on that question. Is a general trip leader for CMC or is a backpacking trip leader that you're talking about?
I was referring to backpacking specifically. Yeah.
Yeah, so the timeline for that is first of all, become a CMC trip leader first. And then depending upon the experience that you have or the classes that you've taken or the trips that you've taken, there's a way to really quickly become a backpacking trip leader if you've got a lot of experience in backpacking. If you don't have a lot of experience in backpacking, what my number one recommendation is really has three components to it. Number one, take wilderness first aid. Now you have to do that for becoming a CMC trip leader. Great. Take backcountry incident management, which is a 1-day class, $30 it costs you, but it really goes beyond wilderness first aid because when you're out on a backpacking trip, the opportunity to have an incident out there far away from the trailhead is even greater than on a day hike. So you want that skill set that backcountry incident management delivers to you. And the third one is if you're inexperienced, just go take backpacking school. Even if you're somewhat experienced in backpacking, it really puts a lot together in order to do that. But if you've got a bunch of experience and you can, kind of demonstrate that to backpacking. I think there's a specific person, maybe it's Lisa, I'm not sure,
Me.
that you can do that. You can just Lisa has these magical godlike powers that can invest you with the backpacking trip leader insignia on your chest there pretty quickly.
Insignia, yes. I think if it's helpful to think about timeline, like if you're a member who's not a trip leader yet, I'd say at minimum it's a 1 year, probably a 2 year process to become a trip leader, because all of the requirements to be a trip leader just take time. And so I think it took me 2 years. Once you're a trip leader, becoming a backpacking trip leader is really a matter of talking to me and getting my approval. And I'll ask you about your backpacking experience. So it is a bit of an investment overall to become a trip leader, but that's why our trips tend to be, rigorous and safe, because we require that. So
But
yeah,
but
super
Marshall, I'd encourage you to do that. I encourage everyone on the call here to do it, because the more trip leaders we have, that means the more great trips we have on the calendar for everybody to enjoy.
totally. And every trip leader's got a different style, right? Like Wayne, I think your trips are pretty fun. Mine are very
Maybe.
serious. They're not fun. Sierra Designs mentioned, yeah. Cool. It looks like you guys answered the BPX trip specific questions. Any other, yeah, routes or, anybody trying to figure out where to go?
So one recommendation I'd have to everyone is there's a ton of great trips on the calendar. I know that we could always put more on because there's always some wait lists on each of these trips, but really try to go on as many backpacking trips as you feel comfortable with this season. And then you'll be completely and totally ready to take winter camping school, and then we'll get you out there in the winter. So
It is fun. When I took it, it was 0 degrees and it snowed 10 inches
yeah,
overnight.
yeah.
And I
And
got
you
it.
and you
It was the
and you
first and last time I ever went winter camping. But I did it. I learned a lot. It's a good skill to have. Um, yeah. Well, I think Bob, you're a trip leader, right? Are you still there? I'm just gonna start calling on people.
Yeah, I'm a trip leader. I'm just not a backpacking trip leader.
Yeah, but you do a lot of like high summits and technical stuff. Like, do you ever backpack in for any of your
Yeah, like if I'm trying to do more of a remote 14er or 13er.
yeah.
Yeah. But
So is it,
you don't have to have your gear dialed in so much if you're just doing an overnighter.
yeah.
But I've also done a few sections of the John Muir Trail. So that's when it really does help to dial in your base weight.
Yeah, and especially if you're adding technical gear on top of the backpacking stuff, like that's where it gets
Yeah.
complicated. Yeah. Cool. Well, any other thoughts or questions before we set you free?
I would just say one thing in closing. There's a lot of information tonight from Lisa, which is and Wayne, wonderful information, and we will post it. But also have a look at the backpacking section webpage, because there's great information on there. And also another thing that Lisa did a while ago was an infographic on how to be a good trip participant. And that's what it's all about. The better you are prepared in all kinds of ways, the more fun the trip's going to be. And for those of you interested in becoming a leader, you should be really interested in how to become a good participant as well, because that's going to be your ideal goal.
Yeah, that's a good point. Cool. Well, super excited to get the season started. I went last weekend. I'm going next weekend, so I hope to see you guys out there. And you can email us at the backpacking section anytime at cmcbpx@gmail. I'll put it in the chat. So you can contact us there if you have any questions about the backpacking school. I'm just going to throw my personal email in here. Don't abuse it. Don't sell my info. But if you have any backpacking school questions, you can reach out to me as well. or any other, well, you get it, gmail.com. Any other issues or questions, you can reach out to any of us at any time. We're happy to help. And we're hoping to see you at some future events and on the trail.
Was Lost Creek muddy this weekend?
No, it
No?
really wasn't. There was
That's
some
good.
snow, a little bit of snow, but it wasn't bad.
Yeah,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah, it's great. It's ready to go.
Cool.
Cool. Well, thanks everybody.
This is cool. Thank you.
You're
Great.
cool. Thanks for
Everyone's
coming.
excited.
Thank you guys so much for putting
I'm
us
so-
on.
I'm so glad you called from the mountain, Marshall. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I was surprised I had service. So.